Okay, in this section, we're going to cover some soft shore alternatives to bulkheads. So the first step, of course, is to try to mitigate your erosion risks by managing your drainage and really establishing a good vegetation cover. And we're here to help support bulkhead removal projects. And we can also add some soft shore stabilization to your project if that's needed. But these are kind of the best situation is just to be able to remove a bulkhead that wasn't placed necessarily. So let's just look at what these soft shore options are. Here's some examples of places that have done some bulkhead removals with soft shore alternatives. The picture on the left, you'll notice that the bank is kind of cut back at a slope. So that would be one method, would be to remove a vertical bulkhead and then take some of the soil that's up behind it and cut it back at a slope so that vegetation could get established and the roots can start to hold that soil in place. You'll notice also that the toe of that little slope has eroded a little bit, and that's to be expected. And erosion is a really natural process, and because it's been held up for so long with bulkheads, you'll see it happen pretty quickly after a bulkhead is removed. But what it's doing is contributing sediment to a starved beach, and so it will come to a stabilized point after some time. Soft shore projects often include beach nourishment and maybe some large woody debris, and then a combination of those things, and then always planting. So log placement is something that's been experimented as these soft shore techniques have been developed. We've really found that it's important that logs are placed well above the high water mark so that they don't mobilize or get eroded away around, because the anchors that are used when they're placed lower often get exposed. So logs are a great habitat feature, but it's best if they're placed in a way that they don't need to be anchored. So they're up high enough on the beach where they're just providing maybe some diffusion when there's really high energy wash from storms and things. Beach nourishment is a technique that is used to kind of replace that sediment that forage fish need for spawning. When it's been eroded away, you can see the picture on the top. They had placed a bunch of cobble to protect their shoreline, this low-lying property or houses on this property. And the alternative that was placed afterwards was kind of a berm of the more appropriate size sediment with logs in it and vegetation. And that's been an effective project that hasn't had big erosion problems. Yeah, so adding sediment can be kind of a temporary thing in some places, and in some places, depending on the way the drift cell is moving, it'll stay for a little bit longer. Okay, and then in places where this, if you look at the little diagram, you can see the really steep bank that was the original condition. And then one way to deal with that is to cut the bank back so that the slope is more gentle, and that will allow the establishment of trees and shrubs on those slopes and stabilize things. So if you're able to get rid of that really vertical slope, you can slow the erosion process. And there's a few techniques you can use with fabrics and soil in bags to hold soil in place while the roots get established, so that you can have a vegetated slope that's steep in an area where all of the vegetation has been removed in the past. And then we've mentioned before that relocating buildings is something that you have to do sometimes. So and Steve also mentioned elevating, and in cases where houses are on no bank properties and during really, really high tides, they get flooded, then elevation might be a technique that could be used as well. And then, of course, all of these different methods can be combined to create a plan for each site, specific about what challenges they're addressing. So I really think I need a bulkhead. I have to have my bulkhead. Are there still some things that I can do to provide habitat benefits to the shoreline. And of course there are. If you can get some trees established right at your bulkhead to provide some overhanging vegetation, or even just large shrubs like ocean spray and the flowering currant, adding some shade to the upper beach is a good thing to do. And then make sure your septic system is maintained so that you're not having water quality degradation from that. And then also really manage how you use fertilizers and chemicals, because surface runoff of those things to the sound does have a big impact on the health of Puget Sound. And then if you think that you want to cut a tree down or build something along your shoreline, be sure to get the necessary permits so that the agencies that manage those can make sure that you're making good choices about the habitat and shoreline area. So for sure you would need to contact both the Mason County and Fish and Wildlife for any activity near the shoreline. So again, the first thing to do when you're thinking about the challenge that you're having is really identify what the problem is and identify the root cause. So to make sure that you're doing something that is going to be effective and sustainable. And that's one of the things that we like to help people look at when we do our site visits. So let us know if you have any questions.